Hi, and welcome to another episode of Hot Takes with me, the Silver Fox. And it is done. It is over. The votes have been counted. The decision has been made. And Margaret Ferrier is out. There will be, assuming that there will be, they get the 10% target on the petition, there will be a by-election. I think it's almost certain. Beforehand, Labour assured everyone that they'd been round speaking to their supporters. They can guarantee 10% of the electorate will sign. And I think also the Conservatives said something similar. So I think it's almost assured that within 24 to 48 hours of the petition being raised, that it will be met, that target will be met, and a by-election will be called. Of course, she will be out. She has the right to stand, but she won't be standing as SNP. She'll have to pay for everything herself. But I think the people of of Rutherglen and Hamilton East will, I think they shall give her short shrift. I cannot see her getting in again. So she's done. Now, of course, she is technically an independent because she lost the SNP whip, but it will count against the SNP because she always voted with them. And so I think it's probably going to be a Labour seat. I mean, in fact, I'm almost certainly sure it's going to be a Labour seat. But Labour need to be very careful. They're starting to say things that are going to annoy people, like the ending of the oil exploration in the North Sea. That is not going to go down well with people in Scotland, especially up in the northeast, because that is the mainstay of not only their local economy, but of mainly the Scottish economy. And so Labour really need to be winding their necks back in and walking that back. But this election, I think, will undoubtedly fall to Labour. I cannot see the SNP taking it. I don't think they've got much in a candidate way. Not that, I don't think Labour have got much in a candidate way, but I'm pretty sure you could put a parrot in a top hat, put a red rosette on it, and it would still get voted in this time. So there we go with that. So we'll take a look at this article, see what the lie of the land is, see what happened, see how she lost the vote, and to see what is going to happen in the next few days. Here goes. So Margaret Ferrier's Commons suspension is confirmed as by-election now looms in Rutherglen and Hamilton West. The Nationalist MP has been banished from the House for 30 days. And then they'll have that election, and that's it. She's gone. So Margaret Ferrier has finally been suspended from Westminster for her COVID rule breach. And now that will annoy a lot of people, particularly on the Conservative side, because it looks like Boris will also find himself in a very similar position. And given now that 30-day suspension seems to be the norm, it could be that Boris will have to have a by-election. Although I suspect in Boris's case, he'll probably win. But that's not the point. They didn't even want it to go to a by-election. But anyway, a by-election now looms in the constituency. Ferrier, who was in the Commons to hear her fate, has been given a brief reprieve last week when not enough MPs were present to vote on her suspension. And that was actually a lie. There were plenty of them. They just weren't in the chamber, but they were all milling around. They could easily have got a quorum and had her voted on. But basically, the Tories pulled the vote. They said, no, we didn't want the vote, so that the whips could have a time to go around and try and whip the Tory party into keeping her, or at least, into not having this 30-day suspension. But unfortunately, that didn't happen, so the vote had to go forward. But anyway, on Tuesday, her peers voted to back the recommendation of the Commons after the Standards Committee, when 185 MPs voted for the suspension, compared with the 37 who voted against it. Under parliamentary rules, if 10% of South Lanarkshire constituents sign a real recall petition, it will trigger a by-election. That is already underway. That will definitely, absolutely happen. Like I say, both Labour and the Tories have managed to get the necessary 10%. So straight away, it's there. It will happen. The vote is likely to signal a major headache for Humza Yousaf and the SNP. Labour is widely expected to take the seat it last won in 2017. I will quite literally eat my hat if Labour don't win that seat. It is that strong. Ferrier, 62, has sat as an independent MP for nearly 3 years after she broke COVID rules in 2020 and had the SNP whip removed from her. She later pleaded guilty to the charge in court and was handed 270 hours of community service, which is the same as you get in Scotland for doing terrible things to a child. But she's refused to step down as an MP and has continued to sit alongside the SNP ranks at Westminster because she needs the money and wants to build her pension pot at taxpayers' expense. 14 of her former SNP colleagues backed her suspension, with the remainder not voting. So nobody actually voted for her to remain, even in the SNP. Not one person voted to save her. That is quite cold, I think, from the SNP. But, I was very surprised at that. Among those to call for the suspension not to stand was the DUP MP, Jim Shannon, who ate with Ferrier on the day she broke the rules while infectious. Scotland's 2 Labour Party MPs, Kenny McCaskill and Neil Hanvey, as well as 32 Tories, said to be nervous about the potential impact on Boris Johnson, as I said, who was fined for breaching COVID rules, and he too will possibly and probably now have a 30-day ban implemented, which would mean a by-election, obviously, for him over in Uxbridge. Do you know that 7 out of 10 people in Uxbridge are directly on this planet because of Boris Johnson's loins? I'm sure it's that number. It's something like that. Ferrier, whose suspension begins on June the 7th, was accompanied in the Commons chamber by Conservative former Minister Andrew Sellers and SNP MP Carol Monaghan, Glasgow North West. At one point, Daniel Krasnitsky, the Conservative MP for Shrewsbury and Atcham, was seen walking to the opposition benches to shake her hand. Wow. These people have no shame, have they? Under parliamentary rules, any MP who misses 10 sitting days due to a suspension is at risk of a by-election, but only if 10% sign the recall petition, which of course that is going to happen. Now, all that's going on there is the rest of this is basically telling people what she did, how she got on a train and all the things. We've covered it 1,000 times, well, 9, something like that, but it has been covered. We've done that to death. I'm not going to go and reiterate and regurgitate that story. I'm just going to say that finally the vote has happened after a lot of kind of nefarious, shady, backroom deals, handshakes, let's see if we can keep her. We don't have to get this done for Boris and all that. Didn't work. Off she goes. Bang. We don't care about her. She is no further interest. She's done. She's gone. She's history. She can go and join the dole queue tomorrow. Don't care. Boris, on the other hand, must be getting a bit worried. Now, the chances are, if he did have by-election, he'd probably win it. But you never know. And given the state of the Tories and the terrible things the bloody Tories are doing with the economy and the tax and this and that and the other, there's a, more than small chance, we say, that Boris could be out. That would be stunning. He'd have more time to spend with other people's children. Although there probably is children, aren't they? But that would be amazing. So that is a story. This is the whole story. She isn't really the story. Boris is the story here. But we shall keep an eye on this and see how it unfolds over the next few days. Anyway, thank you very much for listening to that bit. I'm going to come up, we'll round off, and then I'll be out of this one. Didn't want to go in too deep. Over the next few days, there'll be a lot of calls now from probably both sides of the House. I think definitely from the opposition side, but even within the Conservative Party, there will be calls for Boris to face a similar punishment. Because Boris, whilst he is probably the only one who can possibly save the Conservative Party, isn't entirely well liked within it. There are a lot of people who don't like Boris. Theresa May and her cronies, for example, and now Rishi and his, although I think it's becoming increasingly obvious that Rishi is very soon going to be yesterday's man. But will Boris have a Churchillian comeback? Hard to say. It's possible. I wouldn't put it past him. But if he's going to do it, he needs to do it now. So all that's happening, everything in Parliament at the moment, particularly amongst the Conservatives, it all seems to be orbiting Boris Johnson. You've got him with this COVID inquiry threatening to release all his evidence. Then Rishi saying, if you release your evidence now, but without my authority and without us redacting it, we're going to remove your parliamentary privileges for legal advice and things like that. Because Rishi knows as soon as this comes out, it's all the plotting that Rishi has done will come out. He got through this relatively unscathed. I mean, all these people sort of had to some of them, went of their own volition. Some of them basically had to stand down because the public were gunning for them. But Rishi seems to have avoided it all. He's been played a blinder, if you like. But if this comes out and it's all him all over it, then he's finished. And he's finished within the party as well as in the country. But he can slope off to America. But I think that vacuum, that void that needs to be filled can only be filled with Boris. I really do. And I think it's the only thing the Tory party have got that can possibly, even go close to saving them. And that's what they're going to find themselves. So I think everything at the moment is revolving around Boris. And this is no less, because if this stands, which it stands now, if there's a by-election and whatever, we don't care about her. But it then pushes the Boris by-election. If Boris has his by-election, wins it with an increased majority even, that would be astounding. But if he wins it and he comes back in and he goes, right, bang, I'm the only one to save it. You need to have a leadership election. I'm standing. And they'd stand, and I tell you what, if this went out to the party, the members of the party, they undoubtedly would vote Boris in. But this is all fantastic. It's fantastic to watch. I mean, it's utterly destructive, but it is fantastic to watch. So anyway, I shall round off there. Do stick with it. It is going to sort of run and run and run, and especially all the COVID. So you've got the COVID story in Westminster, the COVID story in Scotland. It is going to run. So if you do watch, do hit the subscribe button. Let's get this and follow these stories. Anyway, thank you very much for watching. If you like what you're seeing here on the channel, please hit the subscribe button, ring the bell, leave a like, leave a comment, please share the video. Definitely leave that like. That's the very important one. And until next time, stay safe, stay well. Don't travel on the train when you got COVID. Don't listen to the Labour Party. Don't listen to the Tory Party. And for heaven's sake, don't vote SNP. And goodbye.